Most people say they want connection, but watch how carefully everything is measured now. What is given? What is returned? What feels worth continuing? We still call it friendship. We still call it love. We still call it support. But underneath, something else is moving. Less patience, less tolerance for inconvenience, more silent calculations that are never spoken out loud. Nothing dramatic happens, no big fight, no clear betrayal, just a slow shift, where warmth becomes conditional, where closeness feels risky, and distance starts to feel safer. We call them relationships, but watch how they actually move. How conversations slowly turn into evaluations. How attention is offered carefully, almost strategically. How interest grows when things are useful and thins out when they are not. Nothing is written, no rules are announced, no agreement is signed, and yet everyone seems to sense the boundaries. How much effort is acceptable? How much vulnerability is tolerated? How much inconvenience can be carried before warmth begins to withdraw? It doesn't arrive as cruelty. It doesn't feel openly hostile. Most of the time it feels reasonable, polite, even mature. As if connection now comes with an unspoken calculation, not said aloud, but quietly felt. Who is giving more? Who is drifting? Who is becoming expensive to keep close? Nothing collapses all at once. No dramatic ending, just a subtle shift where closeness starts to feel conditional and everyone learns, silently, how to negotiate their place within it. Loneliness today doesn't always look like being alone. It shows up in full rooms, in active group chats, in conversations that never quite land. People are present, messages are exchanged, plans are made, and still, something feels missing. Not because no one is there, but because something else has quietly taken the place of commitment. Expectations, unspoken ones, heavy ones. The expectation to be understood without saying much, to be supported without asking, to be prioritized without becoming inconvenient. And when those expectations aren't met, nothing is addressed directly. There is no argument, no confrontation, just distance. Messages slow down, energy shifts, presence becomes optional. Loneliness grows in that space, not from absence but from carrying depth alone. Wanting something real without knowing whether it's shared. It's a quiet kind of isolation, one that doesn't announce itself. Just the feeling of being surrounded and still unsure where you actually stand. Quid pro quo often sounds harsh when it's named. It carries the feeling of cold exchange, of people keeping score, of care being reduced to transaction. But look closer at when it appears. It doesn't usually show up in moments of safety. It emerges when trust becomes costly, when people are unsure how long something will last, when stability feels fragile, when belief starts to feel like a risk. In those conditions, exchange becomes a kind of protection, not because people are cruel, but because uncertainty makes generosity expensive. So effort is measured, availability is limited, support comes with quiet conditions. Not spoken aloud, just felt. This doesn't arrive as malice, it often arrives as caution, as self-preservation. When trust no longer feels secure, people reach for balance, for fairness, for symmetry. Not to harm, but to avoid being the one who gives more in a world where giving has started to feel unsafe. Betrayal is often blamed for the pain that follows. But sit with it carefully. The sharpest hurt rarely comes from what someone did. It comes from what we assumed would never happen. The certainty we carried without checking. The story we built quietly, without ever asking if it was shared. We assume loyalty because it feels natural. We assume consistency because it feels earned. We assume permanence because it feels comforting. And when reality moves differently, the shock feels personal. Not because trust was broken, but because it was never examined. Most assumptions aren't chosen consciously. They form slowly, from patterns we like, from moments that feel safe. So when something shifts, the pain isn't just loss, it's disorientation. The feeling of standing on ground you thought was solid and realizing you never checked its depth. This isn't about blame, not toward others, not toward yourself, just the quiet recognition that unexamined beliefs can wound more deeply than any single act ever could. The same situation can feel very different depending on where you are standing inside yourself. When you feel unstable, every condition feels like pressure. Every exchange feels loaded. An expectation sounds like a demand. A boundary feels like rejection. A transaction feels like exploitation. Not because it is inherently unfair, but because there is no room to move. Strength changes that experience. Not strength as dominance, not confidence as performance, but inner stability. When you are steady, conditions don't feel threatening, they feel visible. You can see what is being asked, you can sense what is being offered, and you can choose without urgency. The structure doesn't disappear, the exchange remains. What changes is how it lands. When you are strong, you don't need to extract fairness from every interaction. You don't need to prove value. You can step back without resentment. You can engage without overgiving. The same world, the same rules, but now, what once felt like exploitation simply feels like choice. Generosity is often treated as proof of goodness. The more you give, the more moral it appears. But look at what happens when giving has no structure. Effort keeps flowing outward, time stretches thin, boundaries soften until they disappear. At first it feels noble, necessary, even loving. But slowly, something else begins to erode. Energy drains, resentment forms quietly. The self becomes harder to locate. This isn't because generosity is wrong. It's because generosity without strength has no container. When there is no inner stability, giving becomes a way to stay included, to remain needed, to avoid being left behind. That kind of generosity costs more than it gives. Strength changes this too. When you are grounded, giving is not a sacrifice of self. It is an expression of it. Nothing is lost. Nothing is owed. Generosity held by strength doesn't erase you. It reveals you. There is a way of living that keeps things functioning. Bills get paid, schedules stay full, responsibilities are managed. Nothing is collapsing, nothing is obviously wrong. And yet, something feels thin. This is the logic of transaction at work. Exchange keeps life moving, effort is matched, value is tracked, risk is minimized. It's efficient, predictable. And for survival, it works. But meaning doesn't grow in efficiency. It grows in places where calculation loosens, where presence isn't constantly weighed, where giving isn't immediately measured against return. Transactional living protects you from loss, from imbalance, from being the one who gives more. But it also protects you from depth, because depth asks for something risky. Time without guarantee, care without immediate proof. When life is reduced only to exchange, nothing breaks. You function, you endure. And yet, beneath all that stability, there can be a quiet hollowness. Not dramatic enough to name, just persistent enough to notice. Strength Strength is often imagined as winning, getting the outcome, securing the position, making sure the deal goes your way. But watch what actually creates freedom. The moment you stop needing the result, something loosens. Urgency fades, pressure softens, choices widen. Not because you stopped caring, but because your stability no longer depends on the exchange. Needing something gives it leverage over you. Not needing it changes the balance immediately. The structure stays the same. The terms don't disappear. What shifts is your position inside it. When you don't need the deal, you can see it clearly. You can engage without contorting yourself. You can walk away without turning bitter. This isn't detachment as indifference. It's independence as inner sufficiency. Strength here isn't about control. It's about not being pulled out of shape by outcomes you once felt dependent on. In that space, choice becomes real, quiet, grounded, and unforced. Betrayal often feels like a verdict on who you are. As if something about you was misjudged, as if trust was a personal mistake. But look more closely at what is actually exposed. When something breaks suddenly, it reveals where the structure could not hold the weight. Not character, not worth, structure. How much dependence was placed in one place? How much stability was outsourced? How many signals were ignored because they felt inconvenient? Betrayal doesn't arrive to shame you. It arrives to show where support was assumed, not built. This doesn't make the event painless. It doesn't remove the shock. But it changes what the pain is about. Instead of asking, how could they do this? The question quietly shifts to, what was carrying more than it could sustain? Seen this way, betrayal becomes diagnostic, not moral, not personal. It shows where reinforcement was missing, where balance was fragile, where clarity had been postponed. And in that seeing, something steadier begins to form, not blame, but structure that can hold next time. Awareness is often mistaken for cynicism, as if seeing clearly means expecting the worst, as if understanding patterns requires emotional withdrawal. But notice the difference. Cynicism closes, it assumes, it hardens before anything actually happens. Awareness does the opposite. It stays open, without being naive. It doesn't rush to trust. It doesn't rush to distrust either. It watches. It notices repetition. It allows time to reveal alignment. There is no bitterness in that, no superiority, just clarity. Awareness doesn't demand guarantees. It doesn't need promises to feel safe. It relies on perception, not hope. This kind of maturity doesn't withdraw from connection. It simply refuses illusion. You can care deeply without surrendering discernment. You can stay warm without pretending blindness is kindness. Awareness isn't a shield against disappointment. It's the ability to meet reality without distortion and remain intact inside it. We live in a world that moves by exchange. That isn't a failure, it's a condition. What matters is not escaping it, but seeing it clearly, without hardening, without pretending. Clarity doesn't make you distant, it keeps you intact. If this resonated with you, let it be known quietly. You can like this video so it reaches others who are sitting with similar questions. If you want more reflections like this, you can subscribe. And if something stirred while listening, share it in the comments.